NASA has ambitious plans to send humans to Mars, but before that, they intend to establish a base on the Moon. This lunar base will serve as a stepping stone, reducing the time required to travel to Mars. Meanwhile, Elon Musk, the founder of SpaceX, is also keen on leading the race to Mars under his banner. European and Russian space agencies are also eyeing Mars missions. However, the harsh conditions on Mars pose significant challenges. The Martian atmosphere lacks the oxygen necessary for human survival, according to NASA. To address this issue, scientists are exploring ways to produce oxygen on Mars. While the International Space Station generates oxygen through various methods, similar techniques may not be viable on Mars. Despite these challenges, the allure of Mars persists. Scientific exploration and the inherent human curiosity drive the desire to colonize Mars. However, there's also a sense of urgency, perhaps fueled by a fear of unknown dangers or constraints on Earth. Indeed, there's a genuine concern that a catastrophe on Earth could jeopardize the existence of the human race, similar to how the dinosaurs faced extinction 65 million years ago. Climate change is one of the major factors driving this concern, and it might eventually lead to a scenario where Mars becomes a viable option for human colonization. While visionaries like Armstrong and Musk initially aimed for Mars colonization by 2026, it seems that the timeline has been pushed back, with Musk now targeting 2029 for this ambitious endeavor. This delay may reflect the complexities involved in such a mission and the need for thorough preparation to ensure its success.
You've slightly put back the expected date to put the first human on Mars till 2029, I want to say.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. I mean, we have built a production system for Starship, so we're making a lot of ships and boosters.
So the other side is also aiming for 2030 to land humans on Mars. The intention is clear, but the real question is who will get there first. It's more about how can someone actually survive once they leave Earth? You'll find a lot of interesting stuff about Mars, almost like a whole different world. Let's talk about a Martian day, also known as a sol. It's actually longer than a day here on Earth, around 39 minutes longer to be precise. Now, when we talk about the weather on Mars, it's not your typical sunny day. It's completely different, and that's part of the intrigue, right? Plus, just like Earth, there are ice caps on the poles of Mars. It's fascinating how similar yet different these two planets can be. Sure, the atmosphere on Mars is thin, but it's there. Yet, there's one crucial thing missing for humans to comfortably live there: oxygen. So, the big question is, how do we make oxygen on Mars? And not just for a couple of people, but for an entire colony. Humans are pretty resilient, right? Especially when it comes to surviving in extreme conditions. Take the International Space Station, ISS, for example. It has been in the harsh environment of space for 25 years, and yet it has consistently provided oxygen and water to the astronauts on board. Think about it. There are typically 4 to 5 astronauts living on the station at any given time, and they all need water for drinking, cooking, and even staying clean. This results in a daily water requirement of at least 45 liters. And when you do the math, that's about 1,350 liters per month and a whopping 16,200 liters per year. Furthermore, they need oxygen to breathe, around 1,000 kilograms annually. Now imagine being 400 kilometers away from Earth. How do you produce all that water and oxygen up there in space? Well, the ISS planned everything with 2 incredible systems: the water recovery system and the oxygen generation system. On Mars, we've got our eyes set on bringing these life support systems into play, just like they do on the ISS. But before we dive into why it's not as straightforward as it sounds, let's break down how these systems actually work. First up, the water reclamation system. Picture this: astronauts living on Mars collecting and recycling their own waste, urine, sweat, even moisture from the air, and turning it into drinkable water. It's like a futuristic version of turning lemons into lemonade. As astronaut Douglas V. Locke once quipped, "Our coffee today is our coffee from yesterday, thanks to the water reclamation system on board the ISS." Now onto oxygen generation. It's a bit like magic, really. The system takes some water, works its magic, and voila! Out comes breathable oxygen. Remember learning about electrolysis in 5th grade science class? Well, it's kind of like that. Electrical current passes through water, splitting it into oxygen gas and hydrogen gas. The oxygen is what we need for breathing, but here's the catch: hydrogen is highly flammable. Now, when it comes to handling hydrogen gas, it's not just released into the void. Instead, it's channeled into another system known as the Sabatier system. Here on the ISS, astronauts' waste, along with carbon dioxide, gets mixed with hydrogen gas. This concoction then undergoes a transformation. Water and methane gas are produced, along with a bit of leftover heat. But let's talk methane gas for a sec. This stuff is pretty handy in space. It's not just some random byproduct. In fact, it serves as both fuel and energy source. You can even use it to crank up the heat. However, there's a catch. Burning methane requires oxygen. And guess what's the most precious resource up here? Yep, you guessed it, oxygen. So all this oxygen and water we rely on aboard the ISS? Well, it all hinges on those refueling missions. Sure, they're super efficient, clocking in at a whopping 98%. But hey, even the best systems have their hiccups. Leaks happen, losses occur. Due to this, water and oxygen have to be restocked every 6 months or so. We gotta haul it all the way up to the ISS from the ground, and let me tell you, those refueling missions don't come cheap. I'm talking about shelling out a pretty penny just to transport a single liter of water a whopping 400 kilometers up there. The journey to the ISS covers a staggering 22.5 crore kilometers. Now, when it comes to whipping up oxygen on distant Mars, it's not exactly a budget-friendly option if you catch my drift. We're talking about some serious costs here. That's why we need to get creative and come up with a system that taps into Mars's own resources to make oxygen. And hey, NASA's got our back on this one. They sent a rover to Mars, not just for kicks, but to test out this cool contraption called MACHI, short for Mars Oxygen In Situ Experiment. Now, the deal up on the ISS is that they rely on refueling for water. But on Mars? Well, we gotta roll up our sleeves and go digging for water ice buried deep beneath the surface or tucked away in the polar caps. It's gonna take some serious drilling and ice extraction. MOXIE on Mars is like a magician pulling oxygen out of thin air, or, in this case, out of carbon dioxide. See, the Martian atmosphere is chock full of the stuff, about 95% carbon dioxide, to be precise. Now, MOXIE does its thing by sucking up that carbon dioxide from the Martian air and giving it a good squeeze. Then it pumps it into an electrolyzer, cranking up the heat to a toasty 800 degrees Celsius. That's hot enough to converting that carbon dioxide into sweet, life-giving oxygen. The electrolyzer, made of gold because it's a top-notch heat conductor, gets the job done while keeping its cool. It separates the gases like a pro, ensuring we get pure oxygen without any nasty carbon monoxide tagging along. But here's the catch: if MOXIE gets a little too enthusiastic and separates out all the carbon, it can leave behind a pesky layer of the stuff, kind of like that burnt residue you find at the bottom of your skillet after frying up some egg. Not exactly ideal, but nobody said making oxygen on Mars was gonna be a walk in the park. That layer of carbon left behind by MOXIE isn't just for show, it actually helps protect the guts of the machine from overheating. That's why we can't afford to cut corners when it comes to this process. Just how much oxygen can MOXIE churn out on Mars? MOXIE needs a hefty dose of energy to get the job done, which is why NASA sometimes waits until the solar panels are soaking up plenty of sunlight before firing it up. So far, MOXIE has only guzzled down about 122 grams of carbon dioxide. That's enough to keep a person breathing for a solid 3.5 hours. But if we're talking about producing more oxygen to sustain a whole colony on Mars, well, that's a whole different ballgame. To scale up the operation, we'd need a beefed-up version of MOXIE and a serious power plant to keep the lights on. The key takeaway here is that MOXIE's process is a real energy hog. It starts by compressing that carbon dioxide, then cranks up the heat to a blistering 800 degrees Celsius. So, solving this energy puzzle is gonna be priority number one if we want to make oxygen production on Mars a reality. Scientists are inventing futuristic technology that will surprise you. Picture this: instead of cranking up the heat to scalding temperatures, they're looking for a clever little trick to break down those carbon dioxide molecules at much lower temperatures. They are planning to create some vibrations that will loosen these oxygen molecules, leaving the carbon dioxide in the dust. Now, this cutting-edge technology is still in the laboratory being tested. But mark my words, it has great potential. It is currently undergoing all kinds of tests to ensure it is working perfectly. Thanks to the unstable combination of atmospheric pressure and temperature here on good old Earth, we haven't been able to pull off this trick. But fear not, because Mars is taking responsibility. Its atmosphere is perfect for giving this technology a try. Our main goal here is to crack the code and discover a way to produce oxygen right there on Mars. We're talking about taking advantage of the resources Mars has to offer and becoming self-reliant. See, the beauty of all this is that we don't want to depend on good old Mother Earth for this. I mean, sure, the International Space Station, ISS, is just a hop, skip, and a jump away, just 250 miles from the Earth's surface. If something goes wrong with the oxygen generator up there, it's no big deal. We can always send our intrepid astronauts back home, no problem. But now imagine this scenario on Mars. We are talking about colonization. If our trusty oxygen-producing machine hits a snag there, we can't just pack up and go home like we're leaving a bad party. We will be in this for a long time. There are no quick trips back to Earth. We need to make sure the oxygen generator is reliable because there will be no going back. Thank you for watching this video until the end. Your support means a lot to us. If you like the content, subscribe, like, and share the video. Your feedback is valuable to us, so don't forget to leave a comment below. See you next time for more interesting content.